Hi, my name is Dr. Felucia, and I'm a licensed psychologist. And in today's video, I'm going to be answering the question, why is it so hard to care for yourself after you've gone through spiritual abuse, right? Why is self-care so difficult? And this has been the experience of a lot of people that I've either worked with professionally or know personally who have been through spiritual abuse. So in this video, I'm going to outline some of the reasons why this could be possible. One of the first reasons that I think of when I encounter this question is that when we are spiritually abused, we are shamed for being human, right? And I have a video about that I'm going to put in the description box, and it goes in to more detail about it. But basically, our humanity is shamed, right? And so when you think about the need for caring for yourself, that's a human thing. But in spiritually abusive environments, a lot of things are, so what I'm looking for, they're kind of overly spiritualized. And there's a lot of spiritual bypass involved. And basically, when I talk about spiritual bypass, and again, got a video on that one too, but it basically means that spirituality is being used to avoid or gloss over an issue. Think about something that's going on. A spiritual bypass, the way I envision it, is someone taking a blanket and just throwing it over the thing they're trying to hide. And that blanket is spirituality. So lots of, cliches and platitudes and things like that. But when we are going back to the concept of self-care, spiritual abuse makes it difficult because, again, you're being shamed for being a human being. And when we have that human need for self-care, we're trained to rationalize it away. We're trained to dismiss it. We're trained to feel ashamed of it. And so if that need comes up, let's say you're just physically exhausted, you're sad, you're just going through a lot, and you need that self-care time or action, you've been trained to rationalize that away and dismiss your need for it altogether. And when that continues to happen, it's almost like you miss the signals, right? So, they say all the time that by the time you're actually thirsty, that means that you're dehydrated, right? And it's kind of similar to people who have gone through spiritual abuse. A lot of times when you start talking about feeling depleted, feeling just not yourself and you need that self-care, it actually, I'm not going to say it's too late, but the time when you would have needed it is past. In fact, it means basically that you caught it late, right? And that's okay. But I'm just trying to explain here why that happened. So the first thing, we're just trying to dismiss it. The second thing is that also with spiritual abuse comes a great deal of emotional and physical exhaustion. Actually, I'm going to stop real quick and actually go back to the first point because there's something else I didn't want to forget. When we are taught through spiritual abuse to ignore our humanity or ashamed of it, or we are shamed for it, what ends up happening is that we become very cerebral, right? Our minds and our bodies and our spirits and souls are all interconnected, right? But when you are going through spiritual abuse, something that can happen is you become very compartmentalized and even very cerebral. So you're thinking yourself out of self-care. Something that somebody had described, and I had this experience myself too, is feeling like my head was separate from my body. People have said the same thing. They feel like their head's either floating on a balloon. They just don't feel in tune with their bodies. They feel like they're a mind and that's separate. And then their body is either somewhere else. They can't get in touch with it. They're very numb. And that, when that happens, or if that happens to you, I really encourage you to get help for that as soon as you can, because it's not something that you want to continue, okay? And it's a skill that takes time. So it doesn't mean you're going to feel that way forever. Just like with everything we talk about on this channel, there's skills that you need to get to where you want, okay? So the second thing is that sometimes self-care after spiritual abuse can be so hard because of the state you're in. You're emotionally and physically exhausted. And so imagine there's a time where, you are just out of sorts. You feel so tired, you haven't eaten, you haven't slept, you've had a really bad day, but now you're going to have to walk several miles to get to the grocery store to get food and water. In that same way, when you are going through spiritual abuse, and you are emotionally and physically exhausted, it makes self-care something that seems like you should either put it on the back burner or it's going to be too hard to do. And again, spiritual abuse affects us physically. I have a video on this about how spiritual abuse affects the body. So, and I'll put that in the link too. But, as you can see, these are things that affect us in all areas of our life. And so we want to say, okay, I'm going to do self-care now. Sometimes you might just be trying to survive, day to day, and that may just not be a priority. And because of the depletion, you feel it's very difficult to even do any of those things. The third reason why it could be really challenging is guilt. And a lot of times people are made to feel guilty for normal things, right? So if you're tired and you take a break, somebody, using the spiritual bypass or whatever the environment may say is, well, you just have to keep working, the Lord is your strength. So just keep working, right? And or you might feel just really sad about something and you hear something like, well, the joy of the Lord is your strength, so you shouldn't be sad, right? Or whatever it is, or basically the overall concept of, since everything you need is from God, then you should not go and try to care for yourself in any other way because it's selfish. So a lot of people feel either guilty or they feel like they're very selfish for doing so. So that is a big reason why sometimes self-care after spiritual abuse is so hard. Okay. By the way, if you're liking this content and you're enjoying it, I would ask that you please subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, share it, and then also comment in the description box so I can hear from you and about your thoughts on the video. So when that happens, we've gone over the three big reasons, right? There's guilt, there's emotional and physical exhaustion that makes it hard, and then also just the shame we feel for being human. So we've learned to ignore the signs that we actually need self-care. So how do we do all of this, right? We know the problems that arise. How do we make the next step to self-care? And I'm not going to go too much into this in this video, but one thing I would encourage you to do is reframe the concept of self-care, right? Just like you would care for somebody else if they were not feeling or they needed your help, you need to care for yourself as well. And I could try and argue all these points and say, well, this is why you shouldn't feel guilty, or this is why you should, not feel like this is a problem to caring for yourself. But I don't think that's the best way to do it, right? Because we tend to have conflicting opinions that we hold in our mind all the time. So what I'm going to ask you to do is two things. The first one thing is I want you to reframe it. And instead of saying self-care, sometimes people have found it helpful to say soul care, right? And I may not be describing soul care in the traditional sense, but when you care for yourself, you are also caring for your soul. And your soul is really important. Our souls get weary, they get tired, they get depleted. And so instead of thinking about it like, oh, self-care, go take a bubble bath or something like that, which is fine. I mean, you can take one, but think about how your soul is being restored. I've also noticed that people who have been through spiritual abuse are very sensitive souls and very deep thinkers. And you can apply that in the situation by trying to see, or not even trying to see, just reframing it as, you know what, right now I'm caring for my soul, whatever that entails, okay? And the second piece of advice that I would give is to is just to do it anyway. I know that it might sound a little bit harsh, but here's the lesson in that is that you have to acknowledge to yourself that you may never feel like engaging in self-care or soul care. And if you wait until you feel like it, you probably won't get it done. And this is true with a lot of other things. So I want you to look at it as you are adopting the mindset of caring for your soul and caring for yourself. Instead of this discrete thing that you're going to put away in a corner till you're ready, make it a continuous part of your life. Just like you care for your body, you also need to care for your spirit and your soul, okay, and yourself. So just do it anyway. And another thing that's going to teach you is that you can do things that you feel guilty about. I talked about in one of my videos how in spiritually abusive environments, shame and guilt are weaponized. And so you're almost trained like an animal to feel that any type of guilt or shame you feel, you have to respond to it, and you have to respond to it in a certain way. And that's not necessarily true. There's false guilt, there's even false shame. And so in this situation, I want you to learn that even though you feel guilty, you might feel like you're not deserving of it. You could be afraid that you're going to be self-centered. Right, whatever those fears are, write them out even and say, these are the things I'm afraid of will happen if I engage in self-care. And then just go engage in self-care and find something that you can do. It may be, just whatever it is. It could be walk in nature. It could be sleeping in when your body feels like it really needs that sleep. Whatever it is, everyone will have their own way of doing it, but I want you to engage in that because that teaches you I can still feel guilty, I can still feel uncomfortable, but that doesn't prevent me from moving in the right direction of my goals. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What struggles have you had with self-care or soul care after spiritual abuse? Does reframing it as soul care make it easier for you? And then also, what comments or what advice would you have for others in this situation? Okay, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And also, if you'd like to book a free consultation with me, you can go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, but I've been made aware that the consultation link in there is not working properly. So just go ahead and email me and I'll put my email in the description box. All right, I hope you have a day that's filled with peace and soul care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.